Okay, I've been fully immersed in the Blitz format for the better part of a month now. I've played hundreds of games in this format, and today I'm going to bring you a tier list of every hero in this format going into Skirmish season number 10. This is all my own thoughts and opinions based on the format as I've played it, and I think it's going to be a blast to go through a lot of heroes, so we better go ahead and get started. But before we go too far, if you want to be one of the final people to pick up a Flesh and Blood advent calendar and open booster packs with me and all my friends, make sure you go down into the link in the description. I only have 8 of these left, so if you want to support the channel and you want to get some really cool packs from all the way back in Welcome to Wraith, all the way up to Rosetta, and open them day by day in the month of December, make sure you pick up one of the last 8. Link in the description, head to the Discord, we'll talk more there. Speaking of talking more, we're just going to go down the list as however this was organized. I don't know. We're going to go into these categories. We got, if you want to spike your Skirmish season, it's going to go up here at the top. If you want a top 8, but still play a hero you really enjoy, these are the heroes I think you could do it with. Heroes that are underrated right now in the format, we're going to go right here. And heroes that are just on the weaker side, but can still be played. And then finally, the meme tier heroes. And I have no clue if everything that I have set up over there is actually going to fit as we put all these heroes in. But I prepped us as best I could by putting all of the heroes that I remembered in the in the LL tier here, and then I started putting heroes in the meme tier, but we may have to add a few more heroes to that meme tier. Okay, starting with Boltyn. I think Boltyn teeters for me right here. I will say the last time I played in Blitz, I lost a game to Boltyn, and I was playing as Blaze. That was definitely a loss that I took and on the chin, and it certainly was one of mine, but I do think he is on the weaker side of things, regardless of the fact that he does have damage potential. I think that there's just a lot that goes against him in the format. Haven't seen a lot of people trying him though, so there could be something there. And the fact that I did lose to it and it was combo and they just found their combo quickly could mean that if you just find the combo quickly, you can just put out more damage than they could say. But the problem with this format is that there's a ton of armor. And so armor suite being what it is, Boltyn can really just kind of get just pushed out of the way off of the when trying to hit the combo. It's just not possible. So I'm going to put him on the weaker side. Dash database is an interesting one. I would say Dash is underrated. Overall, I would think she's a little bit underrated, but I also think she's a little underpowered as well. And I think part of the reason that she's underrated is because she can do some pretty nutty things, but she's also a little underpowered in that the power cards that she has traditionally had access to, there's just a better hero right now that can do it. It's Data Doll. But you could argue that this could be a hero that could just do as well, if not, no, I don't want to say better, but as well as Data Doll, even though Data Doll just gets everything for free. So I'm going to put her in the underrated tier, but I don't expect her to pick up wins at the Skirmish season. She could do it. That would not be shocking to me, but I'm not expecting to see a lot of them. Max the Hype Nitro is certainly a hero that exists in the game of Flesh and Blood and really just doesn't have much position here in the meta. I would consider Max relatively like a pretty low tier hero in the current meta. He can do all the same things that the other mech heroes can do, just worse. And he doesn't really have the space in this format to assemble the mech. And so maybe he's a meme, but I will be kind and put him on the weaker side. I will put him lower than Boltyn. KO Berserker Runt has been making some resurgences, and he can do some interesting things. The fundamental downside is that more often than not, he's going to roll low on some of his bigger attacks, but you could play some pretty crazy things now. You could do just like on the face of it, straight up 20 damage with the 10 foot tall and bulletproof. I do think, and I've always kind of thought this, he's a terrifying, this tier before I changed it to underrated was called dangerous. Heroes that I thought could be dangerous. And you know what? I would describe KO as dangerous. So maybe I'll put KO in the underrated tier. But I do think he is pretty weak in general. Shiana is weak. Shiana is interesting right now because she has access to so many cool things that she can do. Maybe she's still a meme tier hero, but I think if she's a meme tier hero, I would say she's by far far and away the best meme tier hero. At this point, in my opinion, she's climbed out of the meme ranks and now sits firmly atop the on the weak side tier. She's basically pummeled the hero right now, which is kind of hilarious that exists. But yeah, you could totally play her that way. All right, Prism. I see Prism, OG Prism and the new Prism, but I see OG Prism being top 8 material at a skirmish season right now. Yes, she does really get a lot of value off of longer games, and that's not really what you're getting in this format, but when we look at some of the top tier heroes, I think she has some pretty okay matchups into them. And there's certainly some underrated heroes that she actually just does stomp on. So I actually have her doing pretty well. I think Illusionist in general could do pretty well this season. Data Doll is my first Spike the Skirmish season, and this is just so, I mean, what a great story. Like 5 years into Flesh and Blood, and Data Doll is here at the top of the peak. She's at the pinnacle of her powers, and she's so good. She deserved the nerf that they gave her, and she's still really good after it. For those that don't know, Data Doll is quite good. One of the best decks in the format, and I do think there's about like 4, which is kind of crazy. But look how many heroes there are. There's a ton of heroes. So she's definitely one of the 4 best decks in the format, and she deserves the spot. Okay, onward we go into Valda Bright Axe. I would say Valda's underrated. I think, here's the interesting thing. Valda, well, maybe she's on the weaker side. But the cool thing about Valda is you don't really know what you're getting when you sit down to play against a Valda. Like, you kind of interpret Valda to be the hero that essentially just tries to get Crush dominate based on Seismic Surges, so you just go the Seismic Surge route. But you could definitely play a Fatigue version of Valda. There are other Guardians that do it better, but, I mean, not that much better. So, like, she kind of fits nicely as an underrated hero, and she can kind of show up and do some very powerful things overall. I would put her pretty low, though. Honestly, yeah, I would say she's better than Bolton. So if Bolton is like the perfect on the weak side kind of like underrated balance point, I think she's a little bit better than him. Olympia is definitely on the weak side. The interesting thing about Olympia is you can like play Fatigue Great Axe Olympia in this format. But the problem with that is I think the decks that are at the top of the format right now just don't really let you do that unless you're very, very, like, so sold out on the Fatigue side of things. But I do think, you know what, honestly, he's probably better than these heroes. Maybe because of that singular game plan, you could argue that he's underrated. And just like, maybe this is underrated. Maybe that's not a good title. Maybe it's like just like decent. Decent. Maybe decent is the right title, but I'm going to sit him right there. The other Prism I also put in the top 8 skirmish bracket. I've played against a couple of these. Interestingly enough, I think Prism is also, both Prisms are pretty solid in their own ways into the kind of top tier heroes. And then some of them, obviously, they have some downsides depending on those matchups, but they also have some upsides. To me, they're very polarizing, not in the sense that they create like these unwinnable, unlosable matchups, or they have those, but because they attack the meta on different fronts compared to other heroes. But I think that they both do some very solid things, and they both can play differently. Like, for example, Prism Advent of Thrones can just be an Oonga Boonga aggro deck, and this Prism can be like the aura deck that no one expects and no one has the tech for. And you can kind of mix and match those to some degree as well. So you're always getting a little bit of value by playing a Prism because your opponent doesn't really know what they're up against. And then you also get to play Luminaris, which is quite good. Leviah is one of the best decks in the format. I didn't mention it in my video, I think it was last week. And the part of the reason, actually I did mention it, I just cut the middle half of the video out because I had a video that was like 25 minutes long, and I thought people wouldn't want to watch that because who cares about Blitz? And now here I am making a 25-minute long tier list of the entire format. No, Leviah and one other hero was mentioned in that conversation. She has consistently been one of the better heroes in the format, and I'm just telling you this right now. All the way back to National Championship time when I was playing the Blitz format pretty heavily then, she was very good then. She was arguably the best brute because she had access to Blood Rush Bellow and Art of War, and she was just really good with both of them. And then Art of War went away, and I think she was still very good because she had access to Blood Rush Bellow. The unique thing about her is that no one plays her. That's the unique thing about her. And so her representation and her overall win rates are very low on things like Talishar or just in general. Like if you go and play in like casual side events at major tournaments, no one is bringing Leviah. It's crazy. Everyone brings all these other heroes, but no one brings Leviah, especially if like you're trying to spike the tournament. Leviah has like always been a good pick and has always like had pretty solid matchups into everyone, and is like uniquely one of the only 2 decks that I have a losing record into my 300 game Blaze list. Like I have 2 losing records and Leviah is one of them. The other hero I will be putting probably in the top 8, but no one's going to play her. And Leviah deserves this placement. You could maybe argue that she's better overall than Data Doll, but I don't think that's the case. I think Data Doll, if Data Doll gets the play and just like crashes the board, then I think Leviah loses that. But I don't know. I could be wrong. I haven't played as Leviah as much as I've played against Leviah, so this matchup specifically I would like to see more of. Vincent, I also describe as one of the spiked heroes in this format. Yes, here's the thing. If you're looking at this thinking, okay, this tier list, this is the S tier and there should only be like 1 deck, you're wrong. I'm sorry. There's just no way. I guess I could add another slot and we could have like, if you really wanted me to, I could add a slot right here. And then these heroes may fit down in there. But I think Vincent is very much worth the play. The fact that Vincent can put down like 20 damage turns, same thing with Leviah. Both of these heroes have great fridges, can put down 20 damage turns out of not next to nowhere, but like with a little bit of setup, they could put down these crazy turns. And they present unique problems to other heroes that we're going to talk about as we go. Specifically, like if we're looking at it right now, Vincent presents unique problems to the Prisms because of her ability to threaten split damage. Leviah presents unique problems to anyone that wants to block because she has evasive damage and dominate, and she can also go incredibly tall off of the back of multiple Go Again cards and Blood Rush Bellow. And she has a ton of equipment as well. Data Doll puts more damage that you can deal with, period, end of story, even if you have a fridge. So these heroes all kind of give different issues to the rest of the meta that you have to kind of figure out what your meta is and try to solve. So they all really deserve one of those upper spots. Betsy is an underrated hero, maybe an underpowered hero. Betsy's interesting because a lot of the Betsy's that I've played against, and I have played against a couple, maybe I'll put her here. A lot of the Betsy's I've played against, and like I said, I've played against a couple, have been able to pivot between a more fatigue-oriented and a more aggressive game plan, depending on what you're doing. So she has the flexibility that most Guardians have. Valda tends to be a deck that does one or the other, but they tend to do it pretty well. Betsy, I think, perhaps suffers a little bit because of her ability to be flexible. She doesn't really have the best-in-class aggressive ability or the best-in-class fatigue ability, so maybe she sits right there for now. But Yoji is so underrated that I'm gonna put him above. I think Fatigue Yoji has some legs. It's funny because I played against a friend, and I was obviously playing as Blaze, and the deck wasn't an issue, but I played a couple more games against a couple other people, and Fatigue Yoji can definitely do some things. And funnily enough, Fatigue Yoji doesn't do well against board states, but Fatigue Yoji can do well against several of these heroes. Perhaps not this one. I would be actually curious to see that matchup. But I think Fatigue Yoji is perhaps the most underrated pick, so which is why this should just be like fine or like decent. Like that should be the title for this one. I don't know. But he is so underrated. Like you could play Fatigue Yoji if you're very good at the game, and you're very good at fatiguing, but you have to very much know your matchups. Tech Levasan feels like a meme right now. Just there's no real point, and the meta will almost never be slow enough, so maybe he just deserves the meme spot. Emperor's sad. He's decent right now, and I think it's funny. He's actually good. There we go. He's actually good into a lot of these heroes. I would even maybe argue that he's pretty good into Yoji. I don't know. He actually might be not so good into Yoji, but I think he's pretty good. He has his own equipment suite that he can use as blocks, and then he can threaten split damage in a way that Blaze can't, but he is definitely tamped down by Blaze. So if you have a lot of Blaze in your area, I would be very reticent to play Emperor, but I think he could be a top 8 hero depending on your local meta. The new KO is also a top 8 hero. I would say he's actually probably, I don't know. I'm not sure if he's better than the Prisms. Yeah, you know what? I will say it. I think he's probably better than the Prisms. He deserves a spot around here. He's very powerful. He has Blood Rush Bellow. He can do go again into big, like, you know, claw swing into something else. Like, he can do some crazy stuff. He has Savage Sash, and he kind of does the same thing he's always been doing since he came out. So he deserves a spot in the top 8. Dorinthia Quicksilver Prodigy is an interesting one. I consider her more decent than I do just about anything else. I lost my first game to Dorinthia Quicksilver Prodigy today as Blaze in, like, I don't know, maybe 100 games. I think the issue is that she just feels too fair compared to, like, some of these other heroes that just get there so quick. I think that's the issue right now. That's the issue right now with Warrior, is that they're just too fair and they don't get there as quick as, like, some of these big heroes in the format. So I'm not super high on either Dorinthia, and we'll talk about it when we get there, but I am very high on Blaze. I would put Blaze right here. If we're putting this in order, I would probably keep this order. I think Data Doll, Levia, and Blaze are currently, as the chart shows, probably the best heroes in the game, with Vincent behind all of them. I do think Blaze, depending on how good of a player you are, and depending on how experienced your other players are, and then depending on who gets the die roll and who chooses what, and then depending on who sees what in the first 2 turns of the game, Blaze is like the best hero in the game, or the bottom of these 3. But I don't think she goes any lower than that. She's incredible. She's the best wizard that LSS has ever designed, and they deserve all the praise in the world because this hero is incredible, and she's good in like 4 different ways you build her. It's incredible. She is fantastic. I am so sold out, and I absolutely love the deck, and I will be playing hopefully multiple skirmishes with her just so that I can get all the gameplay in with her and feel like I never left anything on the table. Hey, look, Arachne. I think Arachne's probably a meme tier hero. There's no point in playing this Arachne. The other Arachne's better. Just period, end of story. Bravo's on the weak side. First reaction says Bravo's on the weak side, but maybe? No, he's just weak. Maybe that means Valda's weak as well. I can't decide if Valda or Bravo are the better of the 2 Guardians. I definitely think Yoji's the best Guardian, which is kind of crazy. Oh, that's kind of crazy. Maybe I'll leave it like this. I don't know. There's good things to do in Blitz with Bravo, but man, it just feels really rough right now when the heroes that are doing it better just do it way better. You know what I mean? Professor Teklevasan is sort of a meme tier hero as well, along with Teklevasan. Riptide, I don't know. I don't know where Riptide sits. If we're extrapolating, see, here's the thing. I don't see any Riptides ever really kind of doing things, and I haven't played Riptide in a hot minute as far as in Blitz format. I played him a lot around national championships this year. If we're extrapolating out what he does in Classic Constructed, then he should be on this tier. But depending on how you build, well, you know, you could like play the fatigue version of him that does like all traps. You know what? I bet you he's probably okay right now. He's probably okay. If we're looking at like what matchups, like all the go again traps trigger versus this, the buff traps trigger versus this, the reactions not so much. Levia, you could trigger some of the buff traps and the go again traps. He's awful into Blaze, so horrible, like throw up in your mouth awful. Vincent, not great. Not great into Vincent. Yeah, he's probably pretty weak then. And then, yeah. I don't know if I would take him to a tournament. Enigma New Moon is decent, by the way. For those that don't know, Enigma New Moon, the version of Enigma that is currently seeing play in Blitz. The other version is really not seeing a lot of experimentation and play, but this version of Enigma, I would say, is pretty decent. I think she has a lot of upside if she can find her transcends early, but she struggles greatly if she goes 2 cycles without finding like a double transcend kind of a play. She just like loses the game on the spot. But the moment she finds it, she's the epitome of a high roll hero. That is what Enigma New Moon is. So that's pretty cool. But I do think that there's like a lot of room for good players to be able to kind of attack with her into the meta. Maybe I'll put her somewhere up here. But I definitely think that there's ways to exploit her. And she is a little bit fragile as well. Kasai feels like very weak. I don't know if she's anywhere near the other heroes. I don't know. She just feels very weak right now. I've tried her a couple of times and it just feels like, why the heck am I even doing this? Victor feels fine. I would say he could definitely top 8 some events, especially if you're very well like practiced with him. Into this meta, I mean, he doesn't feel terrible. He can throw a big thing and block incredibly efficiently. I don't know if he feels super great into Aura Prism, but he probably feels fantastic into the rest of this. I would imagine he goes okay into Vincent. That one I'd have to play a bunch. He just gets eaten alive by Blaze. I mean, it's not even fair. Holy crap, Blaze just like absolutely poops on him. Dorinthia I don't feel great about as well. I'll put her next to the other Dorinthia. Phi doesn't exist. Yeah, it's kind of sad. Phi doesn't exist. And now we come to a hero I very much want to talk about. I think Lexi is a top 8 hero. I think Lexi is incredibly underrepresented right now. Lexi and Yoji are the 2 most underrated heroes in Blitz. I hate Lexi. And that's funny because I spoiled that hero. Nevertheless, Lexi is very cool, specifically with ice and frostbites. In fact, Lexi has like a silver bullet matchup into multiple heroes, one of which I would describe as Blaze. The problem is I think she gets really tamped down by other heroes. So if there was like a polarizing like tier, she would own it, because I think she can very comfortably play into certain matchups and certain metas, especially if you're just playing like Fuseless, and then she gets absolutely dumpstered by others. So it really depends. So maybe she should go down here, but it really depends on the meta that you're playing into. So yeah, I don't know. It's very interesting. If there's a Yoji that's like spitting on Lexi falls way down. But if Lexi's like only seeing decks that don't want to pitch, or decks like Blaze that want to like play on their turn and get value that way, then she's doing okay. Like it's really interesting. So Lexi's one of those like dark horse type heroes that I could actually see doing very well. Azalea is like right at the top of decent, right at the bottom of top 8 skirmish. Because I could see Azalea actually hitting the nuts. I would put her more in the decent category. I think she's pretty decent. I would maybe put her here. I think this is like accurate to what I believe. Probably that. Yeah, that seems accurate. Florian, man, guys, here's the thing. Why? Like, why play him? Why? There's like a 100% better hero in Vincent. You don't have to set him up. There's just no reason. Like, yeah, you can do things, but why? Dromi is a top 8 deck. See, here's the thing. I think Dromi into all of the rest of these top 8 decks feels pretty good, except maybe Lexi. It depends. It depends on if you can get dragons out very fast, like on turn 0. But Dromi feels very good into the rest of this top 8 field. At least based on how I've been playing her and how I've been seeing her played by others, she feels really solid, especially if you just know how to play Dromi. Where she struggles is into Blaze. It's I mean, if Blaze gets to go first, or if Blaze like has any time to just like play a couple of turns, you just don't do anything as Dromi. Conversely, if Dromi plays Thamai, my old spoiler card, then Blaze is kind of sitting there going, well, what the heck do I do? So it really behooves Blaze players to know that this matchup exists and to know how to play into it. But once you do, Dromi has a real tough time. Dromi also has a tough time here, and I would say it's kind of 50-50, and I think Dromi actually eats Vincent, based on what I've played so far. But it's kind of interesting. She's like good, but I would say these heroes are a real toss-up as far as that's concerned. I am low on Aurora in comparison to so many other people, but you could definitely top 8 skirmishes with Aurora. I don't think I would pick Aurora over Vincent. I don't think I would pick Aurora over Blaze, over Levia. I don't think I would pick it over Data Doll. I would maybe put her right here. I think I'd put her here because I feel like if I'm looking at Aurora versus Prism or Aurora versus this Prism, she's probably doing okay into those matchups, especially if this is Aura Prism that's like trying to build up Spectrals. She could maybe do some stuff into that, though. You would need to like have some tricks to gain action points against Spectra. Yeah, it would be interesting. This would be a kind of like the spot where I would put her, but I could definitely see you top 8ing with her. Katsu is scary. I will say Katsu's actually scary, but it's still kind of just weak. So you could argue either of these. I'm gonna put him somewhere around here, maybe with Phi, hanging out down with Phi. And these heroes go there. These ninjas are probably better than these heroes. Yeah, maybe they make their way up. I would play one of the ninjas probably over. Yeah, that seems good. Benji's probably the best ninja compared to the rest of them. I would put Benji in the decent tier. In fact, if I'm really being very consistent and clear, I would probably play Benji over KO. Yeah, that seems about right. Benji's funny because there's so much armor in this set, that in this format right now, that like it's like, what the heck's the point? But yeah, I don't know. I would do it. Arachne Solitary Confinement is another Spike the Skirmish tier hero. Then you wouldn't think that, but yeah, this hero can really do things. You never really know when they're going to do their thing, and they have so many tools now, so many good blues now, that Arachne Solitary Confinement is just like really good. Even with the new equipment though, Blaze still destroys it. Like, I don't know, man. It's unfortunate, but I think it has some decent disruptive tools into these other heroes. This version of Enigma I have not seen running around. I would just, without really experiencing it one way or the other, I would probably put it at the decent tier, but I would argue that maybe you'd have to build the just pure like aggressive version of the deck to actually do things with it. So I'm just going to leave it at decent tier because I actually don't know. Azuri is unfortunately super weak right now, super weak. Maybe worth the meme tier. Maybe. Now, if we're looking at theoretical matchups, like almost no one plays her in Bliss, which is sad, but if we're looking at theoretical matchups, theoretically she'd be pretty decent into a couple of these heroes. Just because of some of her on hits she could push would be pretty solid. But overall, like there are better heroes to be disruptive with. Terra also feels a little bit like, I would probably put him somewhere in the decent tier. Maybe he's one of the best Guardians. I feel like all the Guardians kind of sit right in that mediocre category. And the cool thing about him is that he gets his effect on demand and he just gets like a free point of damage. So in a way, it's kind of like you're playing a Guardian version of Ira. But again, like most Guardians, he gets eaten by Blaze, and I feel like a couple of these other heroes can block with a Fridge and still just do degenerate, powerful things compared to what Guardians do. New feels like probably the best decent tier hero that no one plays, because New can kind of do some very disruptive things. The problem with New is that Arachne Solitary Confinement's just better and does a lot of the similar stuff. So I don't know why you would play it, but I do think New could do some stuff. But if I'm putting them in an order of like what I think is both power level and what would see play, I'd probably put Enigma New Moon a little bit better. I would see more people playing Enigma New Moon, but I do think the power from New is very warranted. Zen is interesting because Zen comes back, and I think Zen is solid. Perhaps the best, probably the best ninja compared to Benji. Definitely the best ninja compared to Benji. And I think he could very well be decent. You could probably just spike a tournament with him. I think the problem is that he actually does require a little bit of setup to do like one of those big, crazy, powerful turns versus just like, oops, 20 damage. Oops, 18 damage, depending. Well, not oops. They require some setup as well, but I think their explosive turns are more explosive than what Zen does now. But I think I could definitely see someone taking Zen. You know, he probably deserves this spot. He could top 8 with Zen. Verdance and Acilio, I'm just going to bring them both up because unfortunately to me, they are both very weak. Acilio is interesting. You know what? I am going to put Acilio in decent because Acilio actually does have 20 damage combos in this format. He does, not 20, but he does have like very powerful combos in the format. He can go for 20 damage if you do enough Gone on to Flashes, but he plays essentially like he does in the Classic Constructed format. You just kind of set up big damage combos that kind of go super wide. The problem is everybody and their mother is running equipment, and so his big damage, like top of the line 20 damage combo, is just like blocked with armor, and then he has instants, and so that's kind of tough. But you can get very low against him and he could probably smack you. Verdance is interesting. Verdance is one of those heroes that you don't know what you're going to face. I've actually faced a couple of just pure arcane damage Verdances, and yeah, they got me pretty close as well. This is how I see the format, though. I see these 5 heroes really being the cream of the crop. I could see, if you wanted to argue KO being up there, I could see that. Dromi, maybe, so swapping these two makes some sense. You could honestly take these 3 heroes right here and put them up there. If you wanted to take a Prism, it would be a little tough for me to argue yes on Prism because these do sort of predicate on Phantasm attacks. There isn't like a lot of pure aura Prisms running around, but in your local meta, be the judge of that. This is where I see the format, and honestly, it's a great format to be in. I really do believe that any of these heroes could top 8 and possibly take you to a win at the end of it all. And really, these decent heroes, a lot of them jump out like, I personally am not impressed with Quicksilver Prodigy, but I could see a lot of people doing very well with her. Emperor, if you're not in a place with a lot of blazes, Emperor is like really good. And Enigma New Moon, not enough people know what she does, and so you could just steal wins with her. So this is a pretty cool Blitz format. I really hope that they pour more into this format because it's actually really, really good. It's really, really fun. If you enjoy this type of video, make a number, go to another number, and let me know if you want more Blitz content. I will be putting out this weekend. I'm going to work on it, and then next week I'm going to put out a full comprehensive Blaze guide with all the information that I've gained over 300 games playing this hero. My list does not look the same as a lot of the other ones, and I have some strong feelings one way or the other about that, and I'll tell that to you. But if you enjoy this video, make it known down there. And as always, thanks for watching.